Hey guys, it's Julian. Today I'm going to be talking to you about the much requested how to make minimal ambient garage house like Shanti Celeste. As usual, you can get the full project files, samples, MIDI, presets, everything like that from this video is available right at the top of the description on my Bandcamp, and if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there because it's already available. And yeah, let's get started. So here's the project file. We're at 135 BPM, so a little bit faster. This is more like that kind of like upbeat UK garage house sort of feel. So 135 actually works really well for this. And the first sound we have here is the first pad, which sounds like this. So this is what the MIDI looks like. This is based around an A sharp minor 9 chord. So if you look at this, you can see that if I move this up, this first chord here actually is an A sharp minor 9. If you look at it, we have A sharp minor, root note, minor 3rd, and then 5th, and then we have a minor 7th, and then that 9th on top. But then what I've done here, so the 9th is actually, this is the same note as this. So what we're doing here is we're kind of playing with like this dynamic where it starts on the 9th in this low spot where you would have the minor 3rd, and then it moves up to that on the 2nd note. So you get that like resolution happening there, and then the other thing that's happening is this high note, which is technically the 9th, goes up here, and then we get an F. So just by kind of taking one chord shape and then changing 2 notes in it, you can make this interesting sort of chord progression here that's still just very ambient and kind of like based around this one chord, you know, without having too much chord progression, but still like having a progression, if that makes any sense. Now, for the sound here, this is made with analog. So what it is just 2 saw waves, and then we've got a low pass here, and then you can see we actually have all 3 frequency mods turned on. So I have an envelope on there, that's that. You see that like opening? We have an LFO as well, which is going like that. So we got 2 things moving it. This is the envelope and the LFO. So it's kind of like, you know, just the envelope on its own will be like that, and just the LFO on its own will be like that. But when you put them together, you kind of get like that, if that makes any sense. And yeah, so we're getting multiple different movements happening. And then I also have this key tracking here. So this just makes it so the low notes, the filter will be a little bit more closed. The high notes, the filter will be a little bit more open. That helps like with this, like when it goes up to that that kind of makes that come out a bit more. And then we got the amp envelope like that. I've got this vibrato here as well as a bit of unison. And then that's it for inside of the synth. And then we just have a bit of chorus as well as a bit of reverb to give it some space. Some drum bass here as well, which is just kind of beefing it up, you know, making it feel more like big and analog and full. And that's it for the first pad. The second pad sounds like this. So if you look at this pad, the MIDI here is actually based around a lot of the notes that you're seeing in this first pad. I just took that MIDI, and then there's a few notes that we took away. Like if you look, you can see there's no A sharp here in the second pad. There's no, like a lot of the middle notes are missing. But then I also added some notes. I added those 2 in there, and so those are just kind of giving you, well, that's actually an A sharp there. And then we just have a D sharp. So it's just kind of enhancing that switch between the 2 chords, but this just gives something a little bit more like ominous and kind of deep on top of that first pad. And the other thing you'll notice is this is a pad that's made using a sample. So it's really good to just kind of like combine 2 different types of pads like this. You know, we have one which is a synth, one which is a sample, and you get the best of both worlds this way. And the way that we made the sound with this one, so it's this choir sample here. I've taken this, I'll show you the original sample. So just kind of like an deep, sort of like very 90s sounding thing. And then what I've done here is I brought it into a simpler, and then I'm using the loop on the simpler. That is how we're getting this like smooth endless sample like this, essentially. So yeah, the loop, and then the key to this is the fade. The fade is what makes it loop smoothly, because without, if you don't turn up the fade, essentially, every time it loops back, you're going to get like a clicking sound. Then I have also, you can see this low pass is set here, and then I have a bit of an LFO on that, so it just kind of goes back to what that first pad was doing, you know. Now we're hearing two pads moving around at completely different times, you know, completely different things happening in terms of the LFOs, but it's creating a very exciting sound this way. Because you can hear, like, the first pad's a bit faster, and the second one is more like, kind of just like slow waves. So then you put them together, and yeah, you get a lot of life this way. And then I just have a bit of chorus and a bit of reverb on that, you know, not a whole lot of stuff to mix this. That's something like with the layering between these two pads here, is like, you don't really need to do a whole lot of mixing. There's no compression or EQ even or anything like that, because the sounds just kind of mix together on their own, because it's like two very different sounds, you know. And that's something you want to keep in mind, is that with layering, it's not about like perfectly knowing how to EQ two sounds to fit together. It's about just being able to find two sounds that are going to fit together without any of that stuff. You can hear each individual sound here in the stack. And yeah, then we have this bell. Did you see that? All this is doing is just playing F, actually. So that would be, yeah, the fifth of A sharp minor, which is the chord and the key, of course, that we're in. And then what's happening is it's just going from F up to F an octave up. So it's just one note, F, just across 2 octaves. And then for the sound on this one, I just have this bell here, this Ableton sound. You know, it's one of those like live, I believe this is tension. Collision, maybe, I'm not entirely sure. But then we just have a bunch of reverb and some drum bus on that, and this is really just meant to add like a little bit of like an ambient sort of tingle in the background, I guess you could say. It's like every new bar you get that and it just helps so that it's kind of like bridging the gap between rhythmic elements and more like melodic elements. And if we get rid of that, you can hear, like, without it, it kind of feels like it's just missing something. It doesn't have, like, that, like I said, like, more rhythmic and melodic elements. Then we have the lead, which sounds like this. So, this is the lead MIDI. It's a pretty simple pattern. You know, the key with this kind of a lead is you don't want to use too many notes. Like, I'm pretty sure we have, like, 5 total notes here. And that's really the maximum what you would want to use. Because I feel like with melodies, you know, if you can't say what you want to say with, like, 3 or 4 or 5 notes, then, you know, you need to try to pick something that's going to work and still be, the idea is still communicated with a very simple MIDI pattern. If we play this over the pad, you can hear, like, it's just really about how that all fits together. And then also another thing here is you'll notice we're ending on the same note that we start on. That's a good way to make your MIDI and your melody just feel very like sort of satisfying and like it's resolving well. It's just, you know, make it so that when you come back to that last note, it's just the same note that you started on. Now, for the sound on this one, it's a pretty simple lead sound. It's just 2 saw waves. You can see they're an octave apart, and they're super detuned as well. That's what really creates that, like, kind of texture that you hear. If I turn off the detune, you know, it's very flat without it. And then we just have this low pass on here, which you can see is actually very similar to that first pad, where you can see we've got an envelope, and then we also have an LFO on there. So again, we're just giving it lots of movement. We get the amp envelope like that, and then I just have a bit of vibrato, a bit of reverb. You can see the reverb is actually pretty intense, because this is meant to just be super ambient. You know, super like washed out like that. And then we just have some drum bus. And that's it for the lead. Then we have the low end, which sounds like this. And you'll notice there's a lot of groove happening with the low end. So this is the thing, like anytime you're gonna make a more sort of like ambient style of house like this, you know, you really need to make sure that like without any of the ambient stuff, there's still a really tight groove happening. And so that's kind of the idea behind like this low end here. So the first thing is the kick. You know, super simple, just like a nice deep 808 style kick. It hits really hard and it punches through the full mix really nicely as well because it's just like a doom doom doom. Just got some drum busts on that. Then we have the bass line. So there's the pattern, as you can hear when I pitch it up. So you can see it's this really simple pattern. Again, it's just like 4 notes here. We got A sharp. It's just all in that A sharp minor scale. And then again, it's just about like making a super groovy and bouncy bass line. So that you can have all this ambient pads and stuff like that, but there's still this like really tight groove happening underneath it. Now, for the sound with this one, this is just a simple FM sound. Now, really what this comes down to is it's basically just a sine wave. Like, that's really what I wanted. But then I just added in the second oscillator, and what the second oscillator is doing, it's an octave up. You can see the level is there, and then this just has like this really tight, sort of plucky envelope to it. So you're still really just getting the sine wave, but it's got a little bit of like a on the start of the note. And then we also have a filter on here, this low pass, which has an envelope, so that's also giving it a bit of a pluck. And then we just have some drum busts. And then the last thing down here is just this little bass pluck. And that just plays A sharp. You can see this is actually a similar sound to that last one where, yeah, it's just a simple FM2 sine waves. This one is up. The chorus pitch is at 4, so you're getting a little bit more of that metallic kind of thing in there. I've also got a bit of a shaper on this one, and then we just have some chorus, a drum bus, and a high pass filter, and this is really just to add a bit of groove to the bass line. Again, like it's all working together in the low end here to create that groove I was talking about. And then we just have a tiny bit of saturation on everything to kind of glue it together. Here's without that. And with it, you can hear it's really subtle. These are really just more about getting like the right sounds on their own. But that little bit of saturation just ties it all together. And again, like you just need to make sure that like if you're gonna have all this ambient stuff happening in your track, the low end and like especially how that's grooving with the drums just has to really be on point. Like this on its own is a very tight groove without any of that other stuff. That could be a track all by itself. Then we have the percussion. And so this is where the minimal house thing comes in. You know, a lot of this really feels like minimal house percussion. What we have here is just like a lot of really repetitive stuff that's all working together. Like, you can see we have this little bloop sound. Just like a tiny little background sound, but it comes through in the mix. You're just having that little ding, 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 ding. We got like this little blanc, as I've called it. You know, those two working together, very minimal house vibes. And then we have these little like percussions, which is super like UK garage, like deep house, like minimal deep house as well. You know, that's just like that. You know, very tight sort of groove here. Another thing you'll notice is that all of these have a swing on them. So I've actually used this groove across pretty much everything in this project file that has a 16th note, and that's what's creating that like kind of like swing happening there. And then by using a groove on everything rather than doing it by hand, we get a lot more of like a tight kind of like, you know, locked in groove. We're not going to be constantly sitting there like trying to get everything perfectly on the grid, because it's going to have the swing and be a little bit off the grid, but everything is going to be in the same place with how much it is off the grid. And yeah, and then we just have the snare. You know, just like a nice big punchy one like this, lots of mid-range. And then on the group of percussion, we just have a bit of drum bass, you know, real simple. Just kind of ties it all together sonically, as well as like in terms of punch and stuff like that. Here's without it. And then with it. So you can hear that difference, you know? It really makes it punch through the mix. And then finally we just have the hi-hats, which sound like this. So we have this hi-hat, which is made using 2 layers. It's this more like punchy, fast one. And then this much softer kind of like open hi-hat. And you can hear either one of these on their own. Like, this one has a lot of punch to it. It's nice. But it doesn't really have that like sizzly high-end. And then this one is all sizzly high-end. But it doesn't have the body to it. So then you put them together. And there you go. It's going to work really well. And just sit right on top of the mix. And then we have these shakers. So this is just these 3 different shaker samples in a drum rack here, but that's giving you that like, and that's very like deep house and minimal house and garage as well. And yeah, and then on the group of hi-hats, we just have a bit of saturation. So this is why I like to split the percussion and the hi-hats and not just put them in the same group, is because you can see the saturation on this is actually a bit stronger than on the percussion. And also, drum bass on hi-hats works well, but if you want like really bright hi-hats like this, a lot of times the drum bass can get rid of it. So the saturator still gives us that fatness and that push, but without like getting rid of those bright highs that we want. And yeah, so that is it for the hi-hats, and that's also going to be it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. As always, make sure to like this video as well as subscribe, and let me know what you think of this video in the comments. Like I said in the beginning, you can get this full project file, samples, MIDI, presets, everything like that from this video. It's available right at the top of the description, and if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there because it's already available. Thank you so much for all the support lately, guys. You guys have all been grabbing these sample packs, and it really helps me out. And yeah, I'm excited to keep bringing you guys tons of new videos. And yeah, thank you so much, everybody, and I will see you tomorrow with another video.